If you hear your name being called deep inside the forest, you should never answer, even if the voice sounds familiar, even if it sounds like someone you love, even if it sounds like a friend who died years ago, and especially if it sounds like it is standing right behind you, you must not follow it. For centuries, the Algonquin tribes of North America warned about something that lived in the frozen wilderness, a presence that could imitate human voices, a creature that whispered to the hungry, a spirit that slowly changed people from the inside. They called it the Wendigo. In Algonquin legend, the Wendigo was not simply a monster. It was an evil spirit of endless hunger, a being consumed by greed, starvation, and the craving for human flesh. But what makes the legend truly terrifying is the fact that it may not have remained just a legend. Historical records from brutal North American winters describe isolated people suffering from extreme psychological breakdowns. Some reportedly developed violent urges. Others claimed they were transforming into something inhuman, and eventually people gave this phenomenon a name: Wendigo psychosis. So the question is not whether the Wendigo exists. The real question is this: what happens to a human mind when hunger and isolation push it beyond its limit? And if the old legends were true, then perhaps something is still wandering through those frozen forests tonight, hungry, listening, waiting for someone to answer when it calls their name. Snow-covered forests are strangely quiet. Footsteps disappear almost instantly beneath the snow. The freezing wind moves through the trees, sounding almost like distant crying. But according to old stories, the most terrifying sound in the forest was never an animal. It was your own name. Late at night, people claimed they sometimes heard someone calling to them from deep within the woods. At first, they thought it was only the wind, a trick of exhaustion, a sound imagined by a tired mind. But then it would come again, clearer this time, closer, and somehow the voice always sounded familiar, like the voice of a missing friend, a dead relative, someone waiting for them back home. That was the moment people stopped walking, the moment they turned toward the trees. And according to the legends, once you looked into the forest changed. The path behind you no longer looked familiar. The trees began to look the same. And suddenly, everything became too quiet, as if something nearby had stopped breathing just to watch you. The Algonquin tribes passed down the same warning for generations. Never trust a voice in the forest at night. Never answer when something calls your name, and above all, never follow it. Because the Wendigo was said to reveal itself slowly, not through violence at first, but through temptation. To freezing people, it offered hope. To lonely people, it offered comfort. And to those lost in the wilderness, it offered the illusion that survival was just a few steps away. So people followed the voice, one step at a time, deeper into the snow, deeper into the dark. But something always felt wrong. The voice kept getting closer, yet there were never any footsteps, no breathing, no movement in the snow, only the sound of their own name echoing through the trees, again and again, as if the forest itself had become alive. And sometimes, during heavy snowstorms, people claimed they heard another sound nearby, a slow, chewing sound, something hard being crushed between teeth, bones. At least that was what they believed they heard. But whenever they looked around, there was never anyone there. there should not have been anyone there. What made the Wendigo truly horrifying was the belief that it was once human. According to Algonquin legend, the Wendigo was not born a monster. It became one. Long ago, North American winters were merciless. Snowstorms lasted for months. Animals disappeared. Entire communities became isolated from the outside world. And eventually, people began to starve. The tribes believed survival depended on protecting one another, sharing food, enduring hardship together, remaining human no matter how desperate things became. But the legends warned that once someone crossed a certain line, the Wendigo began. The moment a starving person surrendered completely to greed and desperation, something inside them changed. And from that point forward, they were no longer fully human. Their hunger never ended. The more they consumed, the worse the craving became. Not hunger anymore. Something deeper. Something endless. Their bodies remained alive, but their minds slowly disappeared. That is why the Algonquin tribes feared the Wendigo so deeply. To them, it was not merely a creature. It was a curse born from endless greed, starvation, and the collapse of human morality. And according to the stories, the transformation only grew worse over time. Its body became unnaturally thin. Its skin cracked like frozen wood. Its ribs pushed through its flesh. But the most terrifying part was said to be its eyes, empty of everything except hunger, as if the creature had been starving for centuries and still could never be satisfied. What makes the Wendigo legend even stranger is the fact that similar stories appeared in real historical records. Throughout North American history, there were documented cases of people trapped in extreme isolation during brutal winters. Hunters stranded in frozen camps, travelers trapped by snowstorms, entire groups cut off from civilization for weeks, and according to some reports, certain people began showing disturbing psychological symptoms. Some developed violent urges. Others became obsessed with the idea of consuming human flesh. A few even claimed they were becoming something else entirely. People eventually gave this condition a name: Wendigo psychosis. Modern psychology still debates whether it truly existed as a medical condition. But for the people living through those winters, the fear was very real. They believed starvation could destroy the human mind. And once that happened, the Wendigo entered through the emptiness left behind. That was the true horror of the legend. Not simply being hunted by a monster, but becoming one. The Wendigo was said to wander endlessly through frozen forests, forever starving, forever searching. A creature that could never satisfy its hunger. And somewhere in the middle of a blizzard, hidden between the trees, it was said to still be waiting for the next person to lose themselves to the cold. Deep within the winter forests of North America, hunters passed down strange rules for generations. Leave the forest before sunset. Turn back the moment a snowstorm begins. And never follow a figure standing between the trees at night. When younger hunters asked why, the older ones always gave the same answer: because something in the forest could imitate people. Some Algonquin tribes even avoided saying the name Wendigo out loud. They believed speaking the name could attract its attention. One hunter claimed he once saw a massive figure moving through a blizzard. At first, he thought it was a deer, but then it stood upright, on two legs, and he realized something was horribly wrong. The creature was impossibly thin. Its ribs pushed through its skin. Its arms looked far too long to belong to any human being. And between the blowing snow, He could see its chest moving slowly, as if it were still breathing, still alive. But according to the hunter, the creature made no sound at all. No footsteps in the snow, no breathing, nothing. That silence terrified him more than the creature itself. He tried to raise his rifle, but his body refused to move. His hands began shaking uncontrollably. His heartbeat became so loud he could barely hear the wind anymore. And then the figure slowly smiled at him. Not like an animal, like a person, but wrong, completely wrong. The hunter later said that smile haunted him for the rest of his life. And after that night, he never entered the winter forest again. Even as time passed, stories about the Wendigo never disappeared. In fact, people began connecting the legend to real disappearances across remote forests in North America. Campers who vanished during snowstorms, hunters who never returned home, tracks in the snow that suddenly stopped for no reason. In one case, search teams discovered footprints leading deep into the forest. But there were no footprints leading back out. It looked as if the missing person had willingly followed something into the trees, or had been led there. Another story described rescuers finding an abandoned tent in the middle of a frozen campsite. Food was still inside. The fire had not completely burned out. Everything appeared untouched, except for one thing. The people were gone. Search crews later claimed they noticed a strange smell surrounding the campsite. Something rotten, something metallic, like old blood left in the cold too long. Yet no animal carcasses were ever found nearby. In another case, a man who survived after getting lost in the woods described hearing his own name whispered throughout the night. At first, he thought his friends were searching for him, but the voice kept getting closer, even though nobody was there. And just before dawn, he saw something moving slowly between the trees. He later described it as almost human, but not completely. Its movements were unnatural. Its limbs looked too long, too thin, as if its bones had been broken and twisted into the wrong shape. The man ran, and several days later, he was finally rescued. But according to the people who found him, he kept repeating the same thing over and over again. It followed me. It is still out there, and it keeps calling my name. One of the oldest warnings connected to the Wendigo legend says something deeply unsettling. If you see it, it is already too late. At first, people did not understand what that meant, but survivors who claimed to encounter the creature often described the exact same feeling: terror, followed immediately by fascination. They wanted to run, but at the same time, they could not stop looking at it. Some claimed they saw a figure taller than the surrounding trees. Others described glowing eyes watching them through complete darkness. One witness said they saw impossibly long arms moving slowly between distant trees. But according to the stories, the most disturbing part came afterward. People claimed they began hearing things inside their own minds. Whispers about hunger, voices telling them they were freezing, something inviting them deeper into the forest. And even in temperatures far below freezing, many survivors said their bodies became soaked in sweat. Some people claimed they heard another sound nearby, a slow, crunching noise, bones breaking between teeth, very slowly, very carefully, as if something was feeding only a few feet away from them. But whenever they searched the darkness, they found nothing. The legends say the Wendigo does not merely hunt the body. It feeds on fear, on loneliness, on weakness, The Algonquin tribes warned that the greatest danger in the forest was not getting lost. It was losing yourself. Even today, stories about the Wendigo continue to spread through the forests of North America. Some people dismiss the legend completely. They say it was only a story created to explain fear, starvation, and isolation during brutal winters. But others still believe something is out there. And even now, strange accounts continue appearing online. Campers hearing voices outside their tents at night. People discovering footprints in the snow that looked neither human nor animal. Travelers claiming they felt watched deep inside the forest, despite being completely alone. Some say they woke up in the middle of the night after hearing their own name whispered from outside. Others describe hearing footsteps circling around their campsites, only to discover untouched snow when they looked outside. And according to several stories, the forest always became unnaturally silent before anything happened. No wind, no insects, no movement in the trees, as if the entire wilderness had stopped breathing. Then came the sound, very far away at first, a slow chewing noise, something hard crunching between teeth, the sound growing closer and closer. But no matter how carefully people searched the darkness, they never found anything there, only the snow and the silence. Some witnesses claimed they later discovered strange tracks nearby, not paw prints, not normal human footprints, but something stretched, distorted, as if whatever made them had been walking toward them from deep inside the forest. And according to the stories, that is the moment people realized something horrifying. The Wendigo was never hiding from them. It was already following them. For generations, the Algonquin tribes feared three things above all else: starvation, the freezing cold, and the moment a human being stops being human. That is what made the Wendigo legend so terrifying. It was never just a monster story. It was a warning about greed, about isolation, about what happens when desperation destroys the human mind. Over time, people even created a name for the psychological collapse associated with the legend: Wendigo psychosis, the belief that endless hunger could consume a person completely until nothing human remained inside them. And perhaps that is the real horror behind the story. Maybe the Wendigo is not simply a creature hiding somewhere in the forest. Maybe it is something much closer than that, a darkness that exists inside human beings themselves, a hunger that can never truly be satisfied, a part of the mind capable of becoming something unrecognizable when pushed too far. That is why the old warnings still remain. If you hear your name in the forest at night, do not answer, no matter how familiar the voice sounds, no matter how close it feels. Because according to the legend, the thing calling to you may not be human at all. And somewhere tonight, deep inside a frozen forest in North America, something may still be wandering through the snow, hungry, listening, quietly calling someone's name in the dark. If this story left you wondering, the next one is waiting for you. Subscribe and stay with us.